Hi everyone and welcome to episode 5 of a brand new podcast from Teletrac Navman, Mobilizing the Future of Fleets. It's a podcast dedicated to helping fleet and transportation businesses navigate the roads ahead. I'm Barney Goffer, Product Manager for Fleet Energy Solutions at Teletrac Navman, and joining me today is a leading global authority on the subject of EV, Special Advisor to the Government and founder of Zero Carbon Futures, Professor Colin Heron. Professor Heron notably spent 17 years at Nissan, where he was instrumental in the rollout of the Leaf, the world's first mass-market electric vehicle. Good to catch up with you, Colin. And today we're going to be doing something a little different and answering questions from some of our customers across the globe. So potentially an opportunity for us to do some myth busting and talk around some of the issues that our clients are seeing in the market. So Colin, first one is, are EVs dirtier than their ICE counterparts?
Depends how often you wash them. Seriously, no. When we talk about dirty, we have to work out what dirty means. So are we talking about overall emissions out the tailpipe? Are we talking about producing them, etc.? So the simple answer to this is, if we are talking about emissions from the tailpipe, they are cleaner because they don't have a tailpipe. If you then say, but they run on coal power,
I think
all the power comes from electricity, powered by coal, therefore they are dirty and the more. But the bottom line to that is, one, it depends which country you're in and where the coal comes from. But even at the high rates of, say, 400 grams of CO2 per kilowatt hour, when you look at how far a car EV goes per kilowatt hour, then you divide one by the other, it's still less than the best ICE car. So it's what do you mean by dirty? If you're talking about whole life cycles, potentially, if the car's made in the wrong place, it could be that.
Maybe we need to dissect that question a little bit then and think about it in the context of exactly what you've just said, tailpipe emissions, and then let's look at it at total life cycle emissions.
Yes.
So let's break it down into those two categories.
Right. So if we talk about tailpipe emissions, it's a cut and dry case because it doesn't have a tailpipe.
Yep.
So therefore it is zero emission. Yes, there'll be more particulates, which are also emissions, will come off the tyres, and that has been proven because of the weight and the extra torque. One of the things though is that when an EV comes to the end of its life, the battery in the car, it then has another life. It goes into energy storage. So the carbon savings by supporting the grid also have to be added. And a conventional car can't do that. And conventional cars are now, at basic the laws of physics, they're not going to get any cleaner.
So with the analysis that we see in the market when we're talking about total life cycle emissions, are they factoring in the second life of the battery when they do this analysis or not?
Normally not.
So
I haven't seen one where they have.
Okay. They're far greener then?
In my opinion, they're far greener, yes.
Okay. Great question. Hopefully that's helped answer that one for you there. The next one, so is there enough material to make all the batteries we potentially need? So minerals here, right? Let's get into the conversation about cobalt and nickel, no doubt, but yeah.
The main ones which always come up is cobalt and lithium. One of the things is that we never know how much we've got till we look for it. All right? So we are supposed to have passed peak copper, and we're still producing copper in large quantities. So on the lithium aspect of it, we're now finding lithium all over the world because we're looking for it.
Yeah.
Seawater has got billions of tons of it, but it's very dilute. The other thing about lithium as well, it's the prime target for recycling. So unlike a conventional car, you burn the fuel. When we finish with the battery, we can actually take the lithium back out and put it back in the new one. On cobalt, that comes mainly from the Democratic Republic of Congo, 60% does. If we move to LFP, lithium iron phosphate batteries, there's no cobalt. So we take that out of the equation completely. So the cobalt content is already going down. However, the number of vehicles is going up, so we'll still be mining cobalt.
Sure.
So at the moment, in Canada and all places, cobalt is not a cobalt mine, it's a byproduct of mining something else, normally copper.
Okay.
So if it's a copper mine, that's normally where we get the cobalt from.
To sum up the answer to your question, am I right in saying that there is an abundance of raw materials out there for us to actually meet the requirements for electrification? Would that be a fair summary?
That's a fair summary, but we're going to get cleverer in recycling it as well.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Ideally, we don't dig anything out.
Yeah, indeed. Another great question and a great answer. Thanks for that, Colin. So the next one we have here is, are there geographical challenges with the distribution of charging infrastructure? Are some areas or countries getting more focused than others? And what's the impact of this?
Right. A lot of this comes down to policy and the question of how much infrastructure do we actually need?
Mm-hmm.
In China, they've gone for put as many in as possible. In certain parts of America, it's put as few in as possible. It's not the numbers, it's do we put the right charger by the right type, in the right place, at the right time. And all of those we're not doing at the moment.
So nobody's asked that question?
No, we simply go on a charger number, and measuring chargers per 100,000 population of head is a completely pointless metric, which the press use.
So there are challenges with this, and it boils down to the fact that we've just not been smart in terms of how we've thought about the distribution of charging infrastructure ultimately.
In most countries, the Netherlands was different. They had a national network of high power chargers.
Yeah.
In this country, we have around 350 local authorities who do it themselves. So what you've got is a mosaic of activity. So Scotland's one network, and all the country is others, and the private sector's doing what it wants.
Yeah. What about the Nordics? Because they're always sort of held up as a paragon of success when it comes to electrification and what they've done. How have they made it successful?
Well, the Nordics have always had a head start because they've always had this technique of keeping engines warm in the winter, plugging in. They've been used to doing that. So they've run out in infrastructure based on the fact that they've sort of done this in the past. And the other thing is, there's not actually a lot of them. They've got a high percentage, but the populations are small.
Yeah, okay. So perhaps an easier problem to solve, and they've learnt from experiences, which is some lessons we can take from that. So, okay, great, thank you. So, next question. What's the total cost of ownership? Are EVs more expensive to run than ICE vehicles?
Okay. One of the things we have to look at is that there's not a standard EV and there's not a standard equivalent internal combustion engine. A Lamborghini is very expensive to maintain and run. My Zoe isn't. So when I take my car for a service, basically they change the pollen filter. That's all that happens. They don't have to service anything. There's no other moving parts. There's no belts. There's nothing to do. So the running costs are a lot less. At the moment, the upfront cost is, and with all vehicles, the more you use them, the less the cost comes down. So at the moment, I'm probably a bad case, 5,000 miles a year, almost no servicing charge because it's not getting worn, but my cost per mile is quite high. So you've got to do the equivalents, but the actual servicing, maintaining, looking after them, much cheaper.
Yeah, great. It's a really interesting question. It's one that our customers ask us a lot as well. And depending on the use case, this is what it boils down to for us. You find the right use case with the right vehicle to do that job, and over a 3, 4, 5 year period, what we're seeing through our data is that it is going to be cheaper to actually run on electric. And of course, depending on how you're charging, whether you're battery electric storage on site, solar PV, other options that actually make the use case even more justifiable.
Okay, we go to the other scenario is I could have solar panels. On a Saturday, the car's not out, the sun's shining, I fill the car for nothing.
Exactly. Yeah. So ultimately, use case, what are you trying to achieve? Can you do it? If you can, it's probably going to be cheaper is the way we'd summarise that.
And if you want to do it the other way as well, if you fill the car off the solar panels on a Saturday, and on Monday night at 6 o'clock when electricity is expensive, run the house off the car.
Fantastic idea.
It's done. It's been done.
Yeah. So lots of cost saving opportunities once you find the right use case for it.
Yes.
Great. Okay, great question. This is a fascinating one because this debate rages in the press and it feels like EVs are an easy target for this. Battery electric vehicles are a fire risk and they create real problems for drivers of them, and they're far worse than ICE. Is that a true statement or not?
We need to take it apart a little bit. So the big problem is electric scooters, predominantly black coloured electric scooters with questionable batteries and chargers, which are often bought on an open market. They have caused deaths and horrible fires in apartments, etc. They are categorically a problem. The scooters that you see around cities, the orange ones, etc., are not the problem. They're properly made, they're properly maintained. When we get to vehicles, there have been spontaneous battery fires. Absolutely clear. The last research I saw, it's not as prevalent as car fires. There are thousands of spontaneous current vehicle fires which happen. Where things get complicated, right, is when a petrol car catches fire, it generally takes the fuel from the air, the oxygen, to make it burn. So the fire brigade cut off the fuel supply. A battery is a chemical plant, and it produces its own chemicals to enhance the fire. You cannot get inside the battery. You can cool it, you can put the external flames out, but you've got this little reactor inside. So you can put out a car fire with the battery, and then 3 days later, the car catches fire again. So we're working with insurance companies, shipping companies, fire services to work out the best techniques for attacking these fires, what suppression techniques that we can use, but more than that as well, what can we use inside the battery to stop the potential of a short circuit and a fire. But one thing for certain, if you're in an electric vehicle and you suspect it's the battery, get out.
Run away.
If you see smoke, it is not smoke. It's a vapor cloud which might explode. Yeah. So do not get a fire extinguisher out and try and tackle it. Just go away and let the professionals do it.
So pretty scary when it happens, but how often does it happen compared to an internal combustion engine? Any stats that you can share with us here?
I don't have the stats on us, but the frequency is less.
Yes.
And there is a big campaign of misinformation out there. One was Luton Airport, which despite the fact the evidence is absolutely clear, it wasn't an electric vehicle, it still claimed to be an electric vehicle on fire. And sometimes there's a fire in an electric bus, which is an electric fault, got nothing to do with the battery. And the last bus fires were electric faults, not the battery.
It'd be interesting to dissect the data on this if it's available and look at the definitions of electric battery fire versus electric fault fire,
yes,
the mobility that's actually been powered by electricity. Yeah. What type of vehicle was it that actually set on fire? It sounds like there's some regulation requirement around scooters as well. Not the ones that are licensed on the roads, but perhaps the ones that are imported that aren't that safe.
And the fires often relate to a manufacturer as opposed to EV.
Indeed.
So I know one big car company have had 0 fires.
Okay, great.
And one car company that's had a few.
Yeah. So to sum up, really scary, very dangerous if it happens.
If it happens.
But it does not happen that often.
Correct.
There you go. Thanks, great question. And now the last one, so just to wrap things up here, what are the timescales for a fully zero-emission transportation sector? Will we still be using ICE vehicles in 2050? Maybe we could answer that one through policy to begin with, and then any other answers you've got around that as well.
All right. The policy sets it out clearly for HGV and cars. So cars are looking at 80% of all sold new cars will be zero tailgate emission by 2030, fully by 2035. That doesn't stop you buying a second-hand car.
Absolutely.
And running a second-hand car. Looking at cars, I would think when it becomes rare to see a diesel, we're talking 2045, 2050. I would think that's the case. Trucks were going out to 2040. But again, some car companies, obviously Tesla, Nissan have said all electric by 2030. They're not good. They've already stopped making diesels. They don't make them. So the car companies are making the decision for Europe. Other countries, they may do a different technique. So in this country, when you get to the point where a diesel goes past or a petrol and you go, wow, what's that? That's probably 2045, 2050.
Yeah, okay, great. So still going to be around for a while. From the market analysis that we see out there, there's definitely going to be a blend of ICE vehicles, EVs, alternative energies, well into 2050. And yeah, those options will still be available. That's all. Thanks very much, Colin. Some good questions from our customers there and some great answers. And yeah, keep those questions coming. And when Colin and I sit down and chat next time, we'll be ready to answer them for you. Thank you for joining us for the podcast. We look forward to seeing you on the next one.